Thomas Allen with In-Fisherman. We're in Brainerd, Minnesota, near In-Fisherman headquarters in my garage with my good friend Ryan Lilly of Old Town Kayaks, watercraft, canoes. And we're going to talk a little bit about, kayaks, some adventures. We're going to get some back history of the sport of kayak fishing, a little bit of history about you and where you've been. But first thing I got to talk to you about is this thing right behind us. We've just spent 2 days together. Ryan's from Maine, Old Town, Maine, and made the trek to north central Minnesota here so that we could rig out a kayak, a dream rig, if you will, with their ePDL Plus platform, which is a brand new kayak. It kind of features the e-pedal or the e-bike pedal assist drive. I want you to talk a little bit about that, how you got to this point, but you guys won Best of Category at ICAST this year with this thing.
We did, yeah. So this has been several years in the works. It's basically taking ePDL bike technology and bringing it into the kayak drive. It's first of its kind. You know, we've been known for years as being a renowned watercraft maker, starting with canoes back in the day, and fast forward to the last 10 years, we really innovated in kayak and small watercraft propulsion. So this boat right here is taking the best of pedal kayaks, the best of motorized kayaks, and bringing them together into one package. And it also offers that new, e-assist. So like you're fishing the Mississippi River here and you got a strong current.
Yep.
You can work up against that current without exhausting yourself. You can also flip it over to full motorized mode. And if you're slowing down to fish, you get a fully manual pedal drive as well. It's all kind of rolled into one package.
It's important for my wife, I think, that I have the exercise option. But that's important for me to let her think that that's important to me.
Yeah.
But really, the beauty about kayaks is that you can rig it to your exact specifications. If you love to smallmouth fish on Pickwick in Alabama, if you love to catfish in Minnesota or anywhere across the country, you can rig this kayak to exactly how you want it to fish. And I kind of feel like that's what's made it so popular so quickly.
Yeah, you really can. What I love about kayak fishing, and I'm stealing this from somebody that said this recently and said it so eloquently, was, kayak fishing is awesome because it's fishing together by yourself. So you really can customize your craft to your liking. It's not like you and I have to buy a bass boat together and figure out what works for both of us. I can buy a kayak, you can buy a kayak, you can set it up how you prefer to fish it, I can set it up how I prefer to fish it, and we can go fishing together or by ourselves in our own customized watercraft.
And it's fulfilling because you've taken the time to set it up exactly how you want it. And I think that motivates you to use it. We're in my garage. There's a bass boat right over here. I use that throughout the summer, but it is a nice reprieve. It's almost a vacation, if you will, from the tournaments I fish with my son and the stuff I do for work at In-Fisherman, to launch the kayak and to get out and just take it easy.
I think, honestly, I think that's been part of the rise of kayak fishing. Kayak fishing's existed for 10, 20, 30 years. People have been fishing out of kayaks for as long as they've been around. Canoes before that, right? But what's neat about the kayak experience is as the technology and the platforms have advanced over the recent decade, it's given bass anglers that historically have fished out of bass boats or John boats or, center console boats the opportunity to experience fishing in a new way. It takes the love of fishing and brings you closer to the water, allows you to access waters that you don't normally get to access in a normal boat. Or if you're a bank fisherman and you grew up bank fishing and you don't have the budget for a big bass boat, it gets you off the shore.
Sure does.
And you can do a lot to a small craft without breaking the bank.
I don't feel like I'm handicapped in a kayak. That's the thing. I feel like a lot of people, especially if you grew up in the boat era or I've been in a boat most of my life. I've had a boat since I was just out of high school. So there has been a way to get on the water. But, at first when these came out, I got a thing about sitting with my legs straight forward. I'm a bigger man, my blood flow gets cut off. And, I don't want to sit in a canoe without a backrest. And there are things that I expect. If I'm going to do this, I need to be comfortable.
Sure.
But on the flip side, I also want to know that I still have a chance to go catch a fish. Because I'm not going out in this thing for a joyride. This is a opportunity to go fishing. And especially where we live in Minnesota, there are countless lakes that have, if it access at all, most of the time they're pretty shallow or they're hard to get on. In fact, there's a lake an hour and a half west of here that we couldn't get a boat on this year. The bass fishing is second to none. I mean, it's awesome. put a kayak on it, and you're going to have the
Yeah.
place to yourself. So
Yeah.
definitely gives you the access component, but I don't feel like I'm cheated in a kayak at all.
No, and honestly, like by nature of what I do, I get to fish out of boats as well as kayaks and canoes regularly all over the place. And I find that when I get to fish off of the bow of a bass boat or a bay boat, if I'm in the salt water, I miss my kayak.
Yeah.
I love the close action that you have when landing a fish, the challenge of it, the trying to figure out the best way to set up my boat to make it work for whatever pursuit. I just like the challenge. I prefer it. And it's not because of what I do. It's because I've grown in an appreciation for the sport of kayak fishing.
Well, I can be honest with you and say that I never anticipated to be a guy that can be a resource or be a kayak innovator or a rigger. Like, I really enjoy setting these things up. It kind of landed in my lap.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm not going to get rid of my bass boat, but I love having the two options.
Yep.
And especially, I guess I kind of lied. Like, we take the kayaks out just for fun. Our family do here.
Yeah.
And we enjoy that. So there is something to just being on the water. But like you said, you can set it up to however you want. I think, and I'm curious your take on this, the sport has grown leaps and bounds in the last decade especially. And I think it was initially, like you said, a less expensive way for a guy to get on the water. You don't have fuel, motor maintenance. You generally don't have storage issues. You can pretty easily find a place for a kayak or two. So maybe it was a simplification of water access, and leave it up to us bass anglers to just go make it super complicated. But that's part of the fun. I don't want to take away from that. But do you think have we made them too complicated, or is this all just what makes you happy?
Yeah, I don't think so at all. You can make this as simple or as complicated as you want, and that's the beauty of kayak fishing. I think that's why it has grown the way it has, because if I am on a budget, or if I just want something to get out on the water quickly, I can buy a kayak like this, or one of our entry level models, and get it out on the water and catch fish out of it.
Yeah.
It's at the point where like you decide what you want to do, what you want to target, where you're going to fish, that you kind of figure out, all right, maybe I do want a fish finder. Maybe I want 2 screens. Maybe I want live imaging. Maybe I want a motorized kayak.
Maybe I just want to paddle.
Right. Maybe I want to paddle. So like, it's really up to the individual. And I think that's why the sport has grown, is because it's accessible, it's easy to transport, easy to store, and you can make it as simple or as complicated as possible.
The expectations are all on you.
Yeah.
And you can make it what you want. And I want to walk through this, what we've done to it, just kind of give a brief, here's some cool products, things to consider. But before we do that, that's going to be kind of towards the end. This is the star of our show today. But one of the things that's always fascinated me with this industry, you get to meet a lot of people. We get to go to a lot of cool places. It's a lot of work. I get a hard time from some friends and family, like, get a real job. And I mean, it's a real job. We work our butts off. We were up till midnight last night fixing all my wiring problems. That's another story. But tell me a little bit about, you've always been an outdoors guy, but what took place? Where were you at in your life when fishing became Ryan Lilly? Kayaks.
Yeah, my journey to this point, I would have never guessed that I'd be doing what I'm doing. I knew I always wanted to work in the outdoor space, but when I was a lot younger, I'm in my late 30s now. When I was a lot younger, my life was snowboarding. I did everything that I could to be out on the snow as much as possible, and I went to college for business with a focus on ski industry business. So I thought that was going to be my career path, and it was for the first 8 or 9 years of my career, as I was focused on ski. I worked for resorts, I worked retail, was a buyer, a retail manager, and then I took a job with an outdoor company called K2 Sports that manufactures skis and snowboards, amongst other things. And really enjoyed that aspect. But what I come to realize is it was limiting, right? It was super hyper focused. We lived and died by good snow years and bad snow years.
Yep.
The industry was super volatile, and it was tied to what the market was doing and recession. It wasn't recession proof. And I found that my opportunity for growth in that space was pretty limited. But I knew I wanted to stay within the outdoor industry, and one thing led to the next, and I ended up getting a job and working for Garmin, or actually a company that Garmin acquired, that made satellite GPS devices. And then Garmin came along and bought us. And I worked for Garmin for a few years and really enjoyed, stepping out of the ski specific industry and having a much broader focus in the outdoor space. After several years of working for Garmin and for that company, my job was going to move to Kansas. And
you're from Maine.
I'm from Maine,
Yep.
and Maine's a wonderful place, much like North Minnesota,
Yep.
northern Minnesota. And we were really entrenched there with our family. We had young kids at the time, and our family was all there. And we have everything that we want to do in Maine, right? It was really hard for us to envision moving to Kansas.
Some big deer in Kansas.
Some big deer in Kansas. I mean, that was the one thing. It's not all bad. Barbecue.
That's right.
But that's when I was looking for a new job. I knew I wasn't going to move to Kansas. I wasn't willing to take a job outside of my marketing path that I'd already, was well underway on the marketing side of things. And, being in Maine, Old Town and LL Bean is to Maine as Nike is to Oregon. It's our brand. It's our home brand. It's so intertwined with Maine culture. Everybody owns an Old Town. Everybody has memories of, up at Grandma's camp on the lake. She had Old Town. I went to summer camp. There's Old Town. So Old Town was just our brand, one of our brands. And so I saw the opportunity at Old Town, and took the job. And that was right when kayak fishing really started to grow rapidly for our business. So I got in kind of at the ground level of when we started introducing fishing kayaks into the Old Town line. So it just was kind of serendipitous. Outside of my career path though, I have grown up fishing. I love fishing. Maine is awesome because you've got fresh and salt. You've got a variety of, we call them heritage fish in Maine. Brook trout and landlocked salmon are really our heritage fisheries that we protect and love. But we also have great striper fishing. We have great small and largemouth bass fishing. We've got awesome pike fishing. We have an amazing fishery right there in Maine that I grew up and partook and benefited from. And so it really took my love of fishing, my outdoor passion and wanting to work in the outdoor space, and really married the two together serendipitously to find me where I'm at right now. So
well, it's a blessing to do what we do, but this we talked about this earlier. It's easy to see the pictures, to see the video, to see the podcast or whatever, and that's fun. That's really the byproduct of our career paths is to get to get on the water, to test new product. To you guys are always on the next thing. Like, we got this cool boat here. We've waited forever to release this, and I know you guys are already 2 years ahead. Like, what's coming down the pike? What's the next thing? But let's be honest. There's still some days it's the JOB. There's still some days it's I remember I put up some sheetrock and didn't hear all the sniveling and whining I did in those days. But I think you have to have those stepping stones. You have to be in those, earning your licks, right? Of getting through into your career, raising a family, to know, I'm comfortable but not complacent. Right?
Yeah, that's what I love about whether it's the fishing industry, the hunting industry, the general outdoor industry, is if you're looking to make a ton of money, this is not the industry you need to be in.
I've always said, I'm not in this business to get rich. I'm in this business to live richly.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the thing. It's a trade-off, right? I take care of my family. My wife stays home, so I do okay. But I'm not making fistfuls of money.
Right.
It's really about finding that awesome work-life balance, being able to drive into work and look forward to my Monday through Friday.
Right. Yeah.
And all the travel that's associated and being away from my family. It's trade-offs, right? But I get to be around and be a part of an industry that I am super passionate about.
You're right. It does take a little bit of the stress becomes enjoyment. And they said, I've always heard this, right? Find something you love to do and you'll never work a day in your life. And that's true, but there's crap to all these jobs that people don't want to hear about. And we're not going to dig into that necessarily. Maybe that's another podcast for another day. But really, the point is, if you can get yourself positioned and be patient, right? That's the other thing. I suppose when you first started working in the ski business, the fishing business was probably not even in your purview. But that was an important stair step to getting where you're at, and I don't think you trade that, right?
100%.
So yeah. I tell my son the same thing. You're not going to get to where you want to be right away, and you got to, I guess, learn to love the process and the path there. And I mean, it's one of the things I love about the outdoors is
Yeah.
we hear a lot of these stories where people have, you know, done some.
Happened upon it.
That's right.
You know, and just kind of stumbled into it. And yeah, just having an open mind. And, you know, I knew I wanted to be in marketing. You know, that's really leans into my strengths. And I knew I wanted to be in outdoor marketing specifically because I want to bring the lifestyle to the people. You know, I want to sell the story. I want to be a part of the creative process. I want to bring a product to market. That's really satisfying to me. So I knew at least that's what I wanted to do. And I just kept an open mind and looked to make the right moves when they presented themselves. And this, you know, I would have never guessed that I would be working for Old Town and making these awesome boats and being able to tell the story behind Old Town.
Well, but you know, it's also satisfying to watch other people enjoy the fruits of your labor, not for selfish goals, but to know that you created something that they like, or had a hand in creating something you like. I know there's a brain trust at Old Town, but you're right. You're a marketer. You're good at envisioning getting the right people together. And one of probably our favorite memory together is almost getting shipwrecked on Gilligan's Island. And now we've had to keep this under wraps because this boat was not available yet.
Are we telling the story?
I think we should tell a story.
Okay.
And I mean, I know you've given bits and pieces, and we've shared the story out there, but we went on a trip that, now part of the reason we love this sport is, or this business, is because we have an opportunity to go to some cool places.
Yeah.
And I've done, I don't know, a lot of media trips. I've been on some hunts. I've been fishing to Canada, fishing in Texas, fishing in Florida, all over the place. And I'm not really a saltwater guy. I mean, I'll be honest. You know, In-Fisherman is the world's foremost authority on freshwater fishing, so we might dabble in redfish, but that's it.
Right.
So anything out there is like, it's a little bit Greek to me. But when you invited me on this trip, I'm like, well, first of all, I had to sign away my firstborn, you know, to keep my mouth shut on this thing. But the group of guys that was going, is folks I work with at Outdoor Sportsman's Group, and Jeff Weekly, and
Gene McElroy.
Yeah, Gene McElroy. Good
Drew.
Yeah. Good people that are into the business here, but it kind of didn't go the way we planned to begin with. But he said he rented a yacht, and I'm like, a yacht? Okay. You have my attention. I've never been on a yacht.
Yeah.
It wasn't exactly a yacht. Not Bezos' yacht, anyways.
So, you know, when we launch products, we work really hard to, before we launch the product, to get our ducks in the row, to not only get our own creative assets ready to bring the product to market, to make sure all of our retailers have the photos and videos they need to merchandise the product online and in stores. But we also need to build the story and bring in partners in the media to help tell the world about the product we're bringing.
Because you can only toot your horn so much.
Yeah, our audience is only so big. So working with partner media folks and doing events like what we embarked on to help get people into the boat that will write stories or to shoot videos for us really helps us expand our reach to get the news out for new products.
Well, the flip side to that is we're always on the lookout for content. We're always on the lookout for the next great thing. I think like any news source today, love them or hate them, they want to be the first to break the news. And so when we had the opportunity to meet with you to talk about the EPDL, it was like, well, yeah, we're going to do whatever we have to. And, you know, I think we kind of thought that at the end of that event, you know, this thing was going to be just smooth sailing right into ICAST, win the show. It's at, you know, in tackle shop stores or at kayak retailers and ready to go, but it didn't go that way.
No.
It didn't go that way from the minute we left the dock.
No.
They're kind of got off plan a little bit.
Yeah. So this boat's been in the works for several years. It was, even though it's technology that exists, like the EPDL, the e-bike technology has been around for a decade probably.
Sure.
But for this particular application, it was pretty challenging to, you know, put the work in. When you're on an e-bike, you pedal forward and you've got your e-assist and you've got your full motorized bike capability. But when you pedal backwards, it freewheels, right? We had challenged ourselves to make it go in reverse. So when you are doing the e-assist or you're motorized, when you pedal it backwards, it shuts that function off. It has to do some things inside the drive in order to, you know, recouple so that you can go instantly in reverse. And so it took a lot of time to figure that out, dial that in, get the tolerances right, and to also test and validate the drive to make sure that when we brought it to market, it wasn't going to blow up, right?
That sounds
it
like a lot of
wasn't
science.
So there's a lot of science, a lot of engineering behind and testing and validation behind this, because the last thing we want to do at Old Town, we've been around since 1898, 125 years or more. And so the last thing we want to do is bring a product to market that's not tested and validated. We don't want our consumers doing the field testing for us after it launches, right?
Nobody has time for that.
Right. So we took several years to dial this in before we brought it to market. And when we invited you and your crew on this media event, we were in the final stretches, but it was also during COVID. It was in the middle of COVID.
Yeah.
And so, you had supplier issues. You had, so bits and parts and things that we needed in order to get the testing jigs and whatever we needed to get this thing to the finish line. We were still kind of in limbo on whether we could bring it to market at ICAST, but that was the goal. And this was back in 2022.
Yes, right. Well, it was around now. We're probably close to the year.
2 years ago. 2 years ago this month. Mm-hmm. And so we thought maybe we'd be able to make that ICAST launch date. The original goal was Bassmaster.
That's right.
And so we're like, no, we already knew we were going to miss that because that's in March. We had to kind of revisit our launch, and we were like, no, ICAST is the goal. And so we knew we had the budget to do a couple of media events. We wanted to invite our friends with the Outdoor Sportsman Group, which you're a part of, down for a once-in-a-lifetime, unique mothership trip.
Yes.
And we wanted to pick a location that was exotic and interesting for your story angles, but also put the drive in a scenario that made it flourish and would help sell it to you and be like, oh, this is how it works. Because we could go to a farm pond anywhere and it would be cool, but if you weren't battling the wind or current, you wouldn't get to unlock the full potential or see the full picture of what the drive is capable of.
And it's very easy to say, well, just drop it on a body of water anywhere. But, when you have a drive system like this, that's to help you cut time and travel.
Right.
And so something small, it might hurry you to the other side or whatever, but ultimately you want to get to further places because traditionally in a kayak, which that's the way it is, you're restricted to an area that you can
whether
access.
It's your human power or your battery power if it's a motorized boat, like you have limits, right? So this here really expands those limits a lot because you have that motor assist, you've got that pedal e-assist, and you've got human power. So if you forget your battery or you lose your battery power or whatever, you still can pedal your butt home. But the other thing too about this is because this was so we made you sign your life away to go on this trip, it was so top secret that we also had to find a location that we could keep this top secret and that we didn't have the prying eyes of the public. So
and you had it right. I mean, on paper, everything was right. You had the signatures. So we got hard to get to location.
So we got the crew together. We had an awesome plan. And a friend of mine who's from South Florida knew a guy that had a yacht. And we could get the yacht for a reasonable price. And
hell of a cook too, man! Did we get on that trip?
And it was a big enough yacht to where it had a crane to where we could load the kayaks onto the yacht. The yacht had a contender fishing boat that came with it, and we motored off of Key West, halfway between Key West and the Dry Tortugas. So about it was like 30 or 40 mile boat trip on the yacht.
How long
Maybe
was it? 4 hours? I think it was 50 because it took us 4 hours to get there. And I remember on the way out, you had mentioned to me, like, did you get your, check your email one last time or let family know where you're going to be? I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, we're about to lose cell service, he said. Yeah. So I'm looking at my phone and I got one bar that's coming and going. I'm like, crap. So I had to fill out I had to do my auto reply on my email, and I literally could not use my phone.
Right.
From that point on. But do you remember my phone broke on that trip? I got salt in it and it was ruined.
No way.
Yeah, so I have two phones. I have a work phone and a personal phone. My personal phone, I think our first trip out got salt in it and zapped it. Didn't work at all. Yeah.
Well, so we should back up a little bit because it was COVID, right?
Yep.
And this is trade show season. It was like ATA and a lot of brands within the fishing and hunting space use the time between Thanksgiving and middle of January to get content for product launches. They're at shows. There's OR, that Outdoor Retailer happens, ATA happens, SIA happens. So all these big trade shows are happening, and so
everybody's together in small spaces.
Yeah, and we had a limited time frame to do this media event, and we knew given it was COVID and everybody was still kind of having to test and roll the dice on whether they were going places. Right. We knew that there was the potential to lose some people before the trip. And so it was really kind of up in the air on who could actually make it, who would be healthy enough or whatever. So we're all converging on South Florida, and my colleague at the time, Alex, and I were the Johnson Outdoors, the Old Town folks that were putting this event on. And it's a ton of work to get all the logistics together, to get the boats to Florida and to get them onto the yacht before you all show up. Mm-hmm. And so we're kind of, it's a mad scramble while we're all traveling down, and I get a phone call from my photographer. So part of the deal was we brought a photographer so you media folks could focus on the experience, and we were going to take all the photos and video for you and deliver a hard drive to you that you could then take and write your stories. And so we wanted to make this. So our photographer that we had planned to come was coming back from Mexico. He was out with AFCO doing a shoot down in Mexico. And he called me and he said, "Hey, just want to give you the heads up. I'm not feeling great. I just tested. I tested negative, but I just want to let you know." And I said, "Okay, well, I know you're in California making your way back to Florida." He's from Florida. Said, "If you could test one more time before you head our way, that would be great." And so I knew that was a little bit on the fence, and I had contacted a backup photographer while we're en route to Florida just to say, "Hey, could you be on standby? Could you drop everything and join us if Jason gets sick?" And he's like, "Yep, no problem." Yep. So that was already one thing. And then your boss was supposed to come.
The publisher of Kayak Fishing Fun. He's the COO of all the outdoor publications under the OSG brand. And he's a kayak fanatic.
Yeah.
But he was at, I think, SHOT Show.
SHOT or ATA, one of those two. Yeah.
Well, it had to have been SHOT because ATA is one week and then the next week is SHOT. And for him to be available, it had to have been post that. So we're looking at next week will be the year anniversary anyways.
Yeah.
But so, he was coming out of SHOT.
Yeah.
And
coming out of SHOT, and he went down for the count with COVID. Yeah. So we had one confirmed cancellation.
Yep.
We're all making our way down. We got one confirmed cancellation. Our photographer, who is a critical component to this, potentially is going to be out. So we're making our way down to Florida, and we all rendezvous in Key West. And I get the word overnight before we're supposed to get on the yacht that Jason, he gave me a call at 3 a.m. and he said, "Hey, I want to let you know I feel terrible and I tested positive for COVID." So it was like, okay, we know he's out. So we've lost our photographer. So then it started the mad scramble to try to get that backup photographer from the UP in the middle of the winter down to Key West. And so he wasn't awake yet, and I'm friends with him and his family, and I saw his wife was on Instagram, and I said, "Hey, would you mind waking Scott up to see if he can get to Florida?" Lo and behold, before we were out of cell service, I had confirmed that he was going to make his way down and meet up with the guide in Key West, because we were going out on the yacht. We had hired a guide to bring bait out the next day, so we had fresh bait to fish with, and the goal was to get that backup photographer from the UP down to Key West the next morning to get on that boat with the guide to meet us.
No room for error.
And then we went out of cell service, right?
It all had to be planned before we were out of cell service.
So we're motoring out, right? And it was beautiful. We had a steady breeze. Like, it was windy. It wasn't too crazy, but it was windy, a little bit rough. And we're motoring out. We're like on cloud nine. Even though it's not the world's nicest yacht, we're on a yacht. We got kayaks on the roof. We got
January.
Food. We got drinks. And we have really good friends. We're all just having a time of our life. Rigging gear, getting ready. Like, just the anticipation of like the experience we're about to go on was like, it had us all on cloud nine and amped. And so it's a 4-hour boat ride. So we got on the boat at like 8 or 9 in the morning. We get to our spot by noon, 1-ish. And we offloaded the kayaks from the top of the yacht and tied them off the back, and we got all of our fishing gear. We decided before dinner we were going to go out and take the boats out for one, preemptive test run, right? Yeah. So we all get in the boats and we all kind of pedal around the Keys, and we're in the middle of nowhere. Nobody else is around. We're having the time of our life. You guys are, yipping and
we were catching fish right away too. I mean, it was right
catching fish. You guys were blown away by the technology. Everything was like going the way. We didn't have a photographer though, so it was like, let's hope and pray that Scott can make it the next day. But we were having a good time. It was off to a good start, right? So I think it was like dinner time, and the sun was starting to set, and we decided to come back. The deckhand he thought it was a really good idea to tie all of those kayaks off the back of the yacht rather than crane them back up to the roof.
Certainly saved a whole lot of time.
Had a bunch of rope. Yeah. I tied all the knots because I'm kind of anal retentive like that, so we tied them off. We continued to have a great evening, watch the sunset, and about that time we noticed there's a commercial boat that pulled up. We had the whole place to ourselves. We were like
Miles in every direction.
like dozens of miles away from the nearest person, and this commercial boat pulls up, and it's only like 200-300 yards away from us and throws anchor. And we're like, why would you choose to throw anchor and be that close
Right
to us?
there.
We didn't think much of it. We had a nightcap, went to bed, and because where Alex and I were sleeping, there was no AC. The sleeping quarters were really tight because we gave the best to the media.
Well, thank you.
I decided I would go sleep up on the couch in the main galley, and it was right by the picture window, and I ended up going to sleep, and I woke up to screaming at like 3 a.m, screaming, and I like jolted out of bed, and I looked out the picture window to see that commercial boat bearing down on us. And I just threw the blanket off, got out of the couch,
Screaming up and down the
screaming
halls.
up and down the halls, everybody wake up, everybody wake up. And I was looking for the captain, and I rounded the corner of the pilot room, and he was outside on the railing. He was the one that was screaming. He had saw the reflection off the roof, and it woke him up, and he noticed that the boat was coming closer and closer, and near as we could tell, it broke anchor because it was so windy and rough. And at that time, everybody comes up from down below.
Well, now at this point, so Jeff Weekly and I shared quarters, and I mean, you get startled out of bed. Nobody's held responsible for what they say, but I'll just say that there was some strong language in that room because that ship literally thunked into our boat right outside our window. I mean, it was.
Yeah.
We saw it hit right there. Now, I was thinking Titanic. We were in the tropics, but fortunately, I don't know if there was really any damage that occurred, but you're talking 2 a.m. in the morning, and nobody's really with it, and the boat's rocking, and
you're talking like a 60-foot commercial boat.
These are little boats that
80-foot
bumped.
yacht that just came together, T-bone.
Shrimp boat or something. I don't know. Had
Commercial.
a bunch of stuff.
What we figured out later was it was an illegal Cuban commercial fishing boat in U.S. waters.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why we never saw them again. Because after they T-boned us and scraped down the side of our yacht and into the kayaks and disappeared, we never saw it again.
Well, it bumped the kayaks, right? And I know that we realized the boat wasn't sinking, so you took stock of the situation.
Ran down right away after we knew that the boat wasn't going to sink. I ran down, counted the kayaks. They were all there. We all settled down. It was like, wow, that was a close call. That could have been way, way bad. So we all went back to bed, and about 5 or 6 rolled around, and I woke up before everybody else and just had this sinking feeling I needed to go check those kayaks again. So I went down to the back deck and counted and realized at that moment that one of our EPDL boats was no longer there.
Of all the ones, like we said, so we had signed NDAs. This is a proprietary piece of equipment, and it could be going to Cuba for all we know.
Yeah.
And jokingly, one of these could have washed up on the shore somewhere, and some news channel picked it up, and your wife surfing through the news saw.
Or my executives.
Ryan was drafting his resignation letter.
Yeah.
From that moment on, but no, we did realize one was missing. We kind of sat down, collected ourselves after the goofy night, and I had asked Hugh, the captain, how fast is the wind blowing? He said it was about 2.5 knots, and I'm not nautical savvy to say, but I've been told that it's pretty close to a mile per hour is about a knot-ish, give or take. So do some rough math. We knew it was blowing from the west, and that boat had to be somewhere out there 2 to 3 miles, right?
Yeah.
So we grabbed a quick bite to eat, cup of coffee. I hopped in a kayak, you and Alex did, and we went and searched the mangroves.
Yeah. And the trick was, the mangroves, it could have washed into the mangroves, but there's a million of these mangroves in this Marquesas Key area. The other side of the boat's open ocean. Mm-hmm. So depending on what trajectory it took, it was going to be like a needle in a haystack. And it was like, I'd already concluded in my mind that we were never going to find that kayak again.
Oh, well, we need to back up because that's important, because you did the right thing and contacted the Coast Guard, because proprietary did not want someone to find the kayak and assume a kayaker had fallen off and became shark bait. So you got on the horn for that.
So yes, got on the horn, reported kayak missing, all kayakers accounted for, so they at least knew that nobody was missing. We at that point, our fishing guide had arrived from Key West. Thankfully, Scott Niska had made it, and so we had a glimmer of hope. And what we decided was the guide was going to take Jeff, Drew, and Gene with 3 of the kayaks around the Keys and go start fishing while looking. And we were going to fish our way there to kind of divvy up and try to find this thing while we get going. Because we had a photographer, we had a limited time. So you, me, and Alex got in kayaks and started fishing. We spread out and we started fishing our way through the Keys toward where they were going to go. Meanwhile, they tied kayaks off of the guide boat and motored around. And it was on their trip around the Keys that Jean just so happened to glimpse something on the horizon.
Yeah.
And she's like, I see something. And it had floated 2 to 3 miles away. Perfectly upright, no damage to the boat whatsoever. And we rejoiced. We celebrated, and we ended up having one heck of a trip.
Oh, it was unbelievable. And I think that I don't know that kind of set the stage to amplify the success, but it really kind of, I mean, we were near crisis. You know, it could have ended up in Cuba. I mean, just the different ways that it could have gone. It ended up that way. Glad we got it back and everybody was able to get out. And, you know, one of my fishing career highlights occurred on this trip. And I'm kind of a glutton for punishment. I love to musky fish. You know, that's just kind of... I'm learning.
Like predators.
Yeah, well, I like predators. And I'd be the guy reeling in a big tarpon, just pause just long enough so that following hammerhead would eat it. Sorry to my tarpon friends. But so we were out fishing a wreck that was, you know, about half a mile, we thought, from where we were anchored up. And we were catching, boy, all kinds of things. Jack Crevalle, we were catching barracuda. Jeff caught a great big bluefish.
Bluefish.
Yep, which ended up, that bluefish Jeff caught ended up on the cover of Kayak Fishing Fun that year. So, you know, they were fun to catch. I don't have any problem with that, but I asked the guy, just said, is there anything bigger around here? And he's like, yeah, cut that little bitty Jack Crevalle in half and put it on a big hook and drop her to the bottom. So they hooked me up with a heavier rod, and Ryan, within 5 minutes, a fish had picked it up and taken off.
You were going for a sleigh ride.
We went for a ride, and Scott Niska stayed with us. You stayed with me, and so did Gene, because, well, Thomas hooked into a shark. And this is exactly what I wanted, and it was a battle.
And in a kayak, it takes a village.
It did, and now I had to take this a step further, so it took 35 minutes anyways, and Ryan had to get on the backside of the kayak and was literally putting weight down on the
opposite side.
So I could try to haul this fish in. Now, I would not recommend trying to bring a shark into a kayak. So don't do what I say. Don't do what I do what I say, or whatever that old, whatever you tell your kids, right? Probably not the wisest decision.
It was probably a 6 foot, 150 pound nurse shark.
Nurse shark. So when we had realized it was a nurse shark, they're pretty docile. Very strong, but wasn't gonna. I don't even think they have teeth.
They do, but they're not prone to attack or
I wasn't gonna stick my hand in and figure it out, but managed to get this fish in the kayak. Scott took. There's 2 pictures I love. The one of you and I. You're in the background like success, and I'm holding this big curled up angry fish, and then there's just a shot that Scott managed to get where I have this fish in my arms.
Big old bear hug.
Oh, such a cool experience. But you know, you talked about what was available, what we were doing. You know, sharks weren't a focus, but they were all over the place.
We were at one point. We were all hooked up for a couple hours. It was like one after the other after the other. We were all doubles, triples, quadrupled up on sharks. We had lemon sharks, black tips, reef sharks, nurse sharks, spinners. Yep. And we ended up getting into the sharks pretty quickly, which was eye-opening because a few of us decided to go swimming off the yacht, only to find out that the deckhand had a chum bag.
You guys crawled out of the water.
But we jumped out of the water pretty quick. But that was a really memorable trip that ended up, I think solidifying a lot of our friendships.
It sure did, and I think that it created new ones too. Went home with our content, but went home with full hearts, and really that's what made that exciting. And this is a rabbit trail, but I got to tell the short version of the story. But so Jason Arnold was going to be a photographer, great guy, great photographer, got sick, wasn't able to go. Scott Niska was the replacement, who lives in the UP of Michigan, right near Houghton, Michigan. So
which was a modern miracle that he was able to make it from the UP to Key West in January.
And that all the connections worked with his flights, with the guide to it really did work out. Well, Scott had asked me, or we started talking about turkeys, and I'm a squirrel. When we start talking turkeys, I like to talk about that. And he's like, man, you should come hunt with me. And we're in northern Minnesota. He's in the UP. It's actually, I think, to his house, it's just over 6 hours from here. But long story short, I took him up on it. And my daughter and I went out to the UP in Michigan and had one of the most memorable turkey hunts we've ever had. Scott did a lot of good work for us, and we doubled on a pair of turkeys the first morning.
A connection you wouldn't have had we not,
It's divine. Like I don't doubt that. I believe we meet people for good reasons, and this industry's full of friends, and I think that really what sets this industry aside is the common ground and the passions we have.
Yeah.
And I've been on a lot of hunting trips where the talk turns to fishing. I've been on a lot of fishing trips where the talk turns to hunting. So it's not like we're mutually exclusive.
Right.
We're all one big family, and I think that opportunity allows us to kind of come home and your mission was accomplished because we're able to tell the story and share what we did. And I don't know that people realize you could put kayaks on a yacht and go to the Keys and fish and have a good time. And I don't know how often that's been done.
And our mission wasn't to do one of those aspirational trips that very few people will ever do in their life. It was more to put us in a scenario that had current, had tides, had some of the roughest conditions that we've ever fished in, so that we could put this through the paces. So we wanted to, and also be away from the general public because we had something top secret, and we checked all those boxes. But yeah, that was a memorable trip. It was a really cool thing that I don't think I'll ever have anything happen like that. Maybe, but the goal was accomplished because we wanted to put this through the paces, and we were able to put it in the conditions where this thing shines.
Well, and it really did. And what's interesting here, and we're going to talk about this particular build here in a minute, but those were, fresh out of the box boats, right? Yeah. No real accessories, had a paddle, had the drive.
We didn't even have fish finders.
Right, didn't have fish finders. Yeah. And maybe in that case, you maybe don't necessarily need them. There are probably plenty of scenarios across the country where one could make the argument for this rigging over that rigging, but it's proof that you can build these things like you dream about, like we did here, to the hilt, or you can just get it off the trailer and go launch it and go fishing. And I think a bass boat doesn't really work that way. You got to have a trolling motor unless you just not going to work.
Right.
And you got to have some level of electronics. It means you got to have batteries. It means you got to have chargers. So it gets complicated, but you can do this any way that you want. And let's talk about this now. Like I'm excited about this kayak because finally it's here and we can tell the stories that we just told. But we went to work. You came from Old Town, Maine to Brainerd, Minnesota for 2 days of kayak rigging and got a little late last night. Mainly because
we're not electricians.
Yeah, definitely not. But I did some wiring for the lights, which here I don't know if you can see them, but I don't know. Bottom line is, let me see your hands. Let's open. Yeah, he's got blisters on his hands because we were crimping so many splices. So again, not intended, but we're going to probably talk about this part of the trip a few times. So let's talk a little bit about kayak accessories. One of the things that I love about, I think almost all kayaks except most accessories, but you guys have worked closely with Yak Attack. I've worked with Yak Attack in different builds. Railblaza is a fine product line of attachments and accessories, but we got Yak Attack here. What do we have on this boat?
Yak Attack's great, made in the USA. They're really the leader in kayak accessories, and I use their stuff all the time. We partner with them a lot. And so for this particular build, given that we're made in the USA, they're made in the USA, we really wanted to include them because they're the leader, and there's a kind of a partnership, but just in the fact that we're both employing U.S. people to build our products, right?
And so, highly innovative companies.
Yeah, highly innovative. And so what we chose is we really didn't hold back on this. From camera mounts to rod holders to some new accessory there. They've got the track pack.
Track pack to modular. You can see these other ones behind there. You can stack as many of them up as you want, but it's vertical storage that you normally wouldn't have otherwise.
Yep, it's gasketed. So I'm going to use mine at home for soft plastics or to throw my keys in or whatever, but that mounts right to your track, which is cool. We have a cup holder there. It's good for bigger thermoses or coffee,
Nalgene bottle.
Nalgene
Yeah.
bottle. It's big. I use mine at home for spent soft plastics. We have the new Black Pack Pro. Again, we chose the desert color
looks
because
so
it
good
just
on this
pops
camo.
so well with this
Yeah.
camo. So we got the Black Pack Pro that has rod holders in it. We did a few of the shorter tracks to add additional track length to it. So out back we added one for our Visi pole and another camera mount. And so we kind of went to town and tried to show the breadth of what's possible with Yak Attack.
Well,
Right.
and the last build I did was the Old Town Sportsman Autopilot 120, and I put two graphs on that, a Solix 10 and a Helix 9, to have all these different technologies running. But it was more fitting in this build to go with just a Solix 10. So we mounted a Humminbird Solix 10. We added, so the transducer underneath the boat here features Megasite imaging, down imaging 2D, got Lake Master mapping built in, but then I also added Mega Live. So the forward facing sonar, which has been all the rage in fishing lately, we were able to integrate it into this build, and it's got its applications, and I think that in any scenario where you're in a boat that's moving a lot, in the wind or pedaling, how do you control?
Yeah, how to position your boat so that you can make the cast on the
Yeah.
structure the way that the fish want to see it. Now, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
A lot of my team guys are running Homemade or other brands. I'd never seen this particular forward-facing sonar arm before. Talk about this. This is really cool.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. So he's right. You could literally go to a hardware store and buy PVC
pipe,
parts,
yeah.
and it will work. But to have
This is just so clean and professional and slick, man.
This is from fishfindermounts.com. It's a live sonar mount with a turn handle here that it kind of acts as like, if you're thinking of a tiller throttle, if you turn it, it changes the way that it faces, so you don't have to be doing this.
You get this cool indicator up here that shows you which way it's pointed.
Yep, and it's super easy. You just loosen this knob, and then you can reset it, calibrate it, so that you know that the way the fish is pointing is the way the forward-facing sonar
And
is
what's
looking.
neat too is the deploy. Like if you're going from the boat launch to your first fishing spot,
You don't want this hanging off the side because of the drag.
Quick and easy to pull this up.
Yep, it's got a little set screw here. Let's demonstrate this, and it can go this way or that way. But for our discussion here, it just slides up like that, snaps into place, and so then it's out of the water in between spots, or maybe you have a distance to go, and it's as quick as, hey, well, I'm at my spot, pop that up, click it down, and then this set screw kind of just
and then away you go.
kind of locks it in. So Wade and the guys at fishfindermounts.com, they're based out of British Columbia, Canada, over-engineered this stuff to the hilt. And what I really like is the cross vessel application. So I can take this same rig and put it on our TV boat, our Starcraft STX that we use it in Fisherman. You can add shaft length to the bottom of this. So in a kayak, we really only need one. In the STX, we need three, to get underneath the hull of the boat. So it literally is plug and play. It's all cast aluminum. It's a beautiful piece of
Machinery, for sure.
Machinery, yeah. And this is a gear housing, but what's interesting, so you're moving, right? You'd kind of think that the current, as the boat's moving, would want to force that transducer to turn around. The way they designed this, it won't do that.
It won't. That's pretty cool.
So you got to use the handle. So I would recommend that, fishfindermounts.com. Excellent stuff. And the nice thing is we mounted it right to the track right here.
Right.
Pops right off.
Yeah. And what I love is the extra over-the-top flash. We, for safety purposes, rigged this with navigation lights, both your bow red and green, as well as your 360 light off the back. But then we did some internal cockpit lighting, which is awesome because you're fishing low light and you want to see where you dropped your tool or grabbing bait, and you want to see what you're doing. You've got lighting.
Well, we actually had a method to our madness. Like, we can justify all of this. If you've ever used a red light, you know that it's easier on your eyes. You don't have to, really retain your night vision. So we started out with red. We put white LED lights underneath the seat. So if you're looking for pliers or a tackle tray, and they're pretty bright, especially when it's dark. So if they're under the seat, it's not all up in your grill and making you blind. And then because we realized that golly, God bless America. We got red, we got white, and we put blue LEDs in the back. So we've got the red, white, and blue, American-made components. I mean, and God bless our Canada friends, but hey, we love our country here. So the red, white, and blue seemed appropriate, and we got a lot of neat, just dream stuff going on. So I really feel like that.
And then it's worth noting, aside from the screen, the boat itself, the Yak Attack accessories, we also put a shallow water anchor off the back.
Well, and that's the thing. I feel like it's not a new accessory for kayakers, but it's become like a new requirement for kayakers. It's been around a little while. It's the PowerPole Micro, and it runs off a lithium battery, so it's wireless. They do have hardwired options. You can still do that if you want, but it has a little key fob, so you need to slow your roll, double tap the button, the spike goes down. The spike isn't in it right now. We don't have room. But you can put an 8-foot ultralight spike in there, and it does lock you down.
And that's why I think a lot of people love kayak fishing, because you go as big or as simple as possible. Yep. There are manual stakeout pole options that act like a power pole, where you can rig it up with a trolley and a release, and you can manually deploy and retract your power pole, your manual power pole, if you will, stakeout pole. So that's what's so cool about this, is you can go crazy, hog wild like
you
this.
You can put an anchor on it if you want.
Yep.
I mean, there's anchoring systems.
Or you can go simple. And we just really wanted to show it's possible. And I'm really excited for in a couple weeks, we're taking this thing out on the water down in Florida.
Yeah, and again, maybe it'll be Gilligan's Island 2.0. We don't know yet. But it's really important to, I think, have the experience we had in the Keys with the boat before it was released at its bare minimum. Really get a feel for the functionality, the application of currents and tides and shallow water. And that was the thing. While we were looking for that missing kayak, this is a little backstory part to that, but the tides were going out, and so the whole area I had to cross was like 8 inches deep. And the drive, I couldn't keep the drive in the water. So we have this heavy drive in this very boat, the 132 or the big water 132 hull. And I paddled that thing for half a mile, and it was a piece of cake.
Yeah.
So I mean, the multifaceted aspects to these boats and what you're able to do with them, it just the options are endless. So for us to take that raw, bare bones boat in the wilderness and use it is pretty cool. And then to have an opportunity to rig it to our wildest dreams, to my personal specifications of what I'm going to use on a regular basis, is really what brings it all together.
Right.
And here we are. We spent the last 2 days here and had a lot of fun, got this thing rigged, and the only thing we have left to do with this boat is to get it wet in Florida.
Yep.
So what are we going to do down there?
So this trip, we're going to hit a few different waters. We're going to hit some really crystal clear blue water rivers that dump into the Gulf to fish for shoal bass and for largemouth. And we're going to go down to Pensacola area and fish for redfish, trout, sea trout, and maybe some tarpon. And then we're going to end the trip fishing some larger reservoirs in the greater Tallahassee area. Again, we want to put this boat through the paces to help you get content for kayak fishing fun, for in-fishermen, for Florida sportsmen. But then we're also going to use the opportunity to just collect some content for our own marketing purposes. So that's going to be a really fun trip.
Gets us out of the frozen tundra for a week. So
biting off a lot, but we're going to put this thing in salt and fresh, and river, and lake, and in ocean. And I can't wait to put this build through the paces.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and I think I might make another stop or two on the way home, because that might not be enough. But let's talk a little bit about the changing demographic. One of the things that I've seen since these poly rotomolded type kayaks have burst onto the scene, it was an extremely quick rise in popularity. And where I live in Minnesota here, Lund Boats, very popular brand, is an hour and 10 minutes down the road in New York Mills, Minnesota. I'm surprised as a kayak guy here how few tournament style or hardcore fishing kayaks are not on the water here. We got 400 lakes within an hour of the Brainerd Lakes.
Probably many of them that don't have boat ramps.
Yeah. Right. So it's a prime area, but so I'm wondering, my theory is there an abundance of like those 14-foot, 16-foot Lunds that, maybe people buy instead of one of these? But what do you think?
I think if it's anything like back home in Maine, I think as further north you go, the more people are stuck in their ways. It's the way Grandpa showed me. It's the way I fished with my dad. But people are starting to open their eyes to what this unlocks, and it gives you a new and a different perspective and experience to fish your favorite fisheries or some new fisheries you haven't been able to access. So I think that the tide has changed, and I've seen it in Maine. Like, even though we're based in Maine, same sort of scenario. People usually troll for fish in the spring out of side console boats like the Lund Alaskans and or the canoe. But we're seeing a lot more of these crop up in Maine, and I think it's slower just because there's a lack of distribution in this neck of the woods, not as many dealers.
I've thought about opening a shop here in town.
I think it would do quite well.
I think it would do very well. But I think you're right. I think that it's going to take some time. And, our effort here collectively last couple of days was to put together a video of this build, if nothing else, to just show you that you can do it yourself.
Yep.
And how many times have we said that customization is up to you. You can build it how you want. But you can really do this yourself. YouTube is a great resource for me. I know you recommend that too.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, YouTube gives a lot of confidence because you can visually see somebody make mistakes, teach you along the way. You learn a lot. I know I learn a lot visually, and it gives me confidence to tackle a project that I might not know how to tackle without, some visual cues. So YouTube's a great resource. Google's great. A lot of people are doing. There's a lot of owners groups now, specifically for Old Town products.
Yes.
Depending on what make and model boat that you have, there's probably an owners group on Facebook that you can join and see
wealth of knowledge
yes. and get a lot of advice from fellow owners on how they approached a custom job.
So I mean, you're not spending $200 on this kayak. This is it's an investment that you're going to make. But what I really want people to understand and take home is, once you bought the boat, once you have added your accessories, you have a fishing machine. But it takes you everywhere that a big boat can go. Everywhere, Great Lakes, rivers. Everything, but then it also provides the opportunity to get to those places that perhaps a bigger boat is not going to be able to access. And I think that's the real power, that's the real thrill of building a kayak to your specifications, getting to waters that likely hasn't been fished in a very long time, if ever. And so it kind of puts you in control of your destiny, your dream fishing trip, right?
Fishing together, separately.
Well, the dream build in and of itself is what I think excites kayak anglers. I'll be honest, I almost enjoy scheming this up and putting it together as much as I do catching fish out of it. But the best way to bring it full circle is to get it on the water and keep it going. So I know that Old Town has a boat for everyone. You can probably spend quite a bit of time surfing through there to see what you've got, but what different platforms do you have available? Yeah,
so the Sportsman line features paddle, pedal, motorized, and now the EPDL. Mm-hmm. So there's, depending on how you want to propel the boat, there's an option. And then there's, from budget all the way to the EPDL and autopilot, you can spend as little or as much as you're able. What I'd recommend is, if you're interested, you haven't bought a kayak before, or maybe you want to upgrade from the Sam's Club kayak that you've had for years, I would recommend, going to our website, going to our dealer locator. Our dealer locator is intelligent. It tells you who carries the Sportsman line, who demos boats, who has the EPDL in stock. And then we also have live feeds to most of our retailers that show you who has what in inventory. So I'd recommend going down to a demo event or reaching out to your local retailer to schedule a demo to try 2 or 3 models to see what's right for you. But paddle, pedal, motorized, and then EPDL is what we have to offer. And we also have a great lineup of canoes and sit inside kayaks and sit on top recreational kayaks. So we have something for everyone in the family. And we really just care about getting you out on the water so you can experience the great outdoors.